it's real, there's nothing left for you to fear. Shake your ass, come over here, now scream.
I would put my neck on the line and say, you know, Robbie is the best live performer in the world. He's the best live performer I've ever seen. And when you fill Nebworth 3 nights in a row, with something like over 400,000, nearly 500,000 people rocking up to a field to watch you play, he's got to have something special.
Everybody knows at least, you know, one of his songs, or at least 2 of the songs. Everybody knows them, and it's so unmistakable, and there always seems to be at least one song that, you know, that everybody can actually like of Robbie Williams. He just has this universal appeal.
Angels will always be his song. The same as like New York, New York is Frank Sinatra's song, although he's got many. This Charming Man is Morrissey's song. You know, that will always follow him, and I think that is his greatest achievement.
Robbie has got this universal appeal, backed up by his incredibly successful record sales, where people will listen to his music from all ages. And so they are, by definition, going to be the songs that are put on at weddings and family reunions and stuff like that, because everyone from all age groups likes them, and they're popular and accessible to all types.
It's the whole package. You can't just go out there and sing it. You can't just go out there and look like him. You've got to sing as near as damn it as him, do all the grand gestures, do the moves. There's a difference between a lookalike and a tribute, so I bring the essence of Robbie alive and bring the whole ambience of Robbie Williams live when I do the shows.
He was born in a venue, basically, isn't he? So it's there for him and it's around him all the time, so he's bound to take that on, or either become introverted or extroverted, and I imagine he's a bit of both, really.
His dad was a comedian and a singer, and he'd travel around the holiday camps and the clubs of the north, and often take Robbie with me. In fact, Robbie's always said that his dad gave him good microphone technique. He learned how to hold the mic at an early age. So I think on the whole, really quite a happy childhood.
I mean, I think there are 2 things about Robbie. He had a broken family, his parents split up from an early age, and that affects anybody. And they go out wanting to be the centre of attention, to be the big performer, to put on this big, cheeky, extrovert front, to cover up their insecurities. But added to that, of course, his mum was a pub landlord, but his dad was a performer and out doing the clubs as well. So obviously one of his traits in the blood, the Robbie Williams blood, is kind of all about being out there in front of a crowd and being the entertainer.
He actually went for an audition that his mum, I don't know how pushy his mum is, but his mum made him go to the audition. Because the story is that he actually got, the same day, in 1990, he got 2 letters, and one was from the school saying he'd failed every single GCSE that he'd taken, and the other one was from Nigel Martin Smith saying he'd passed the audition, he'd gotten to take that.
The mad thing for Rob is that he was only 15 years old, and when his friends were going down the youth club, he was in the back of a transit van with the other 4, being, you know, bunged out into gay clubs, doing all sorts of performances of their early material, and he lost a lot of his childhood. But he was only 15 when he started, just turning 16, but I mean, either way, it's still a young age to be out there doing that kind of thing. And he was the baby of the band and possibly not looked after as, you know, he would have been if he'd just been living his proper childhood amongst his friends and his family.
Obviously, he liked being successful, having lots of ladies running after him and screaming for him. I think he did enjoy being on stage. I think he didn't enjoy being packaged, because Take That were a very packaged band. They couldn't do a lot of things. They couldn't be seen drunk, they couldn't be seen smoking, you know, and these were things that young Robbie, well, you know, he wanted to do. He wanted to get drunk, he wanted to smoke, and in the music industry, if anybody tells you otherwise, they're lying. There are drugs, and unfortunately Robbie was one of those people. He did enjoy taking the drugs, he did enjoy drinking the alcohol, he did enjoy the ladies, and I think in the end of the day, it all got too much for him, and he realised that he as a person was not happy with the way that he was being packaged as Take That. He was always this kind of comedian who's quite sarcastic, and the rest of the guys weren't really like that. They all seemed to be quite happy to be packaged. So I think it was not exactly surprising that Robbie was the first one to break away from Take That and to actually launch his own solo career.
1995, the year that he left Take That, was quite a significant year for all kinds of things. Suddenly there was this explosion, the Britpop explosion, and he, the first thing he did upon leaving Take That was to go to the Glastonbury Festival and hang out with Liam and Noel of Oasis backstage.
I think he was quite lost at first. I mean, there's the famous 1995 when he was at Glastonbury, and he spent the whole time hanging out with Oasis and completely off his head backstage, and loads of photographs of him looking like he's having the time of his life. And I think probably it's very hard to go back from that to being the sort of the guy on the second row of the boy band doing the dance steps. So the time had come for him to leave the band, I would imagine. As regards to the solo career, it was very hit and miss at first. In the first thing he recorded was a cover of Freedom by George Michael, obviously making a big point there. And he got to #2, but it wasn't the huge kind of #1 that he'd hoped for.
To sum Robbie up and that first release, if I go back to a time when I went to interview them up in Manchester, and there was this thing, they were all in this room and they had sackfuls of mail everywhere, and obviously they were called in once a week by Nigel to open up the mail, and they would sit there going through all the dolls and all the little teddy bears that had been thrown at them, bombarded, and all the letters, and you could just smell the perfume as well because all the fans were like, you know, squirting it, horrible, and they'd open up all the mail, and that was like Howard, Gary, Mark and Jason would be doing that. The day I was up there, Robbie would have nothing to do with any of that stuff, and he was in the other corner of the room with his headphones on, and I went over and said, Rob, what are you listening to? Thinking it was probably like something like, I don't know, New Kids or something else that was around at the time. And he was listening to like really heavy Cypress Hill, you know, and he was like, what, 16 going on 17? Didn't want anything to do with them. Listening to Cypress Hill really summed him up. This little boy inside, desperate to get out, almost hated this whole clean-cut boy band thing right from the word go. So then to rock out something like Freedom and change the sound was exactly where he wanted to be. He must have just loved it. Couldn't wait to be doing that and not some clean-cut boy band hit again.
It's quite a sort of a tongue-in-cheek song for Robbie to have chosen. It's quite sort of dancey, it's quite an uplifting song. It's not 100 miles away from the kind of sound that Take That had in any case, but it was a little bit spikier. Yeah, he made it a little bit rockier rather than poppier. So it was a sound that was still going to appeal to the Take That fans, you know, because after all, this was Robbie from Take That. But also, it had that word freedom. It was all about being free from something, and I think for Robbie, you know, he felt that he was free from the chains of being in a boy band.
It was quite a tough period for Rob after Freedom 90, and then I think he went a bit off the rails, and there were all the allegations of, you know, drugs he was doing, and I think probably spent a bit of time in rehab, which meant spending a bit of time away from Anna Friel, who I think was his girlfriend at the time, and made it quite tough. So that relationship went. And I think his confidence in himself went, but I think he probably was still trying to come to terms with what had happened in Take That and embark on this big solo career, and having been nailed by drugs and booze and whatever else he was doing at the time, and just depressing him so much so that he was just finding it hard to get on with his life.
It was very negative. He was known for stumbling out of parties, being drunk a lot, being a bit overweight. Just known for being somebody who'd completely lost the plot, I think, really. And yeah, interviews, he did an awful lot to slag off Gary Barlow particularly. He got involved in the feud with Oasis, of course. There was a big feud with Noel Gallagher and Liam Gallagher that went back and forth for a year or two. Yeah, he seemed like somebody who was trying to pick a fight because he didn't know what he wanted to do with himself.
All throughout the promotional period of Life Through a Lens, which was his debut album, I think he's still having problems shaking off that boy band image. I mean, he was hanging around with Oasis and the Gallagher brothers. He was being photographed being quite drunk and, you know, with all his tattoos and everything. And he was being photographed at rock concerts and things and wearing T-shirts of bands that you wouldn't think of somebody in a boy band as even liking.
I was very, very surprised. I thought it was a really good album, great songs, and they weren't what you expected at all. You know, they were really well thought out, and I think at that point, again with Freedom, he was making a statement. I think that album was very much making a statement. I don't think it was so much geared towards being massively successful at that point.
It can be regarded as one of his most important albums because being his first, and there was always going to be a lot of scrutiny on to what he was going to do after he'd left Take That. And it's very important that from the word go he distanced himself from what he'd been doing with Take That and showed more of his true colours and character throughout, consistently throughout making that record.
I think when Lazy Days came out, it was still very much Robbie from Take That, so he still had that Take That baggage, if you like, attached to him. But I think he was starting slowly to get other fans in, people who were hearing songs and saying, oh, well, actually, they're not bad songs, you know, they're quite nice. But, you know, they didn't have the impact of some of the other songs that he's done.
Not only are they not good enough, but they're probably not written in the same mould. Like Old Before I Die was meant to be a bit of a sing-along with, you know, the chorus very simple and memorable and with high sustained notes that everyone can sort of sing along with.
It was kind of a shock for all his fans because they expected him to do the pop genre kind of thing, but it was heading towards a different kind of a vocal in the style of Liam Gallagher, kind of an indie kind of vibe, but yeah, it's sort of like, it sort of kick-started his career, but obviously that wasn't the song that made his name to the man that we know of him today.
So just when he needed it, Rob gets a massive turnaround, big turnaround year. He had Lazy Days and South of the Border, Rubbish, Flop, Pant singles, and then teams up with Guy Chambers, Angels. Brilliant tune. It matured Robbie from being a boy, he became a man in that video with the long coat, the scarf, the big aerial shots, black and white. He looked great, sounded great, beautiful lyrics. They touched millions of hearts all around the world, and musically it was brilliant with Guy Chambers. So that was it. Suddenly Angels, brand new Robbie, brand new record deal.
Guy Chambers and Robbie wasn't initially the most obvious combination to put together, but they did between them. I mean, you have to suspect that Guy Chambers did most of the songwriting initially because he was the person who was used to doing it, but they did produce a stream of singles. Angels was one, obviously, Millennium, they brought up between them, and they just seemed to have these sort of 5 or 6 great singles that everyone went to #1 or close to it.